Hello everybody and welcome back to another Wainrider Wednesday, the weekly series where we look at progress for the upcoming mod for Rome Total War's Alexander expansion, Total War Wainriders. As you can see, we are looking at the lovely faction selection screen here for the mod. And in this one, we're going to take the preview in a bit of a different direction. So far, we've been focusing on the units. We've looked a lot at the faction rosters and at the campaign start positions. But one thing that we haven't looked at yet is something that you're probably going to spend a lot of time interfacing with in the mod, and that is the building system. And so today we're going to use the faction of Gondor to look at that. We've got a very unique style of the UI for the buildings, and we're going to help you navigate that with this preview today. As a bit of a disclaimer, all the stuff you're about to see should be considered a work in progress. It has been about a year or more that Valor has been working on this aspect of the mod, and we've got it, I think, pretty close to where we want it to be. But as I just got off Discord with him, and he has been mentioning that there are a few areas that he may touch up here or there, but for the most part, what you're going to see here is going to be a fair visual representation to what you're likely to see in the released version. So let's check it out. So here we are at the central heartland of Gondor, and our capital, our starting capital at any rate, is Minas Anor. I've gone into the console and added myself a bunch of money and built pretty much everything that I could build here, with the exception, of course, of the mutually exclusive types of things that we may talk a little bit about in the video here. But I don't intend this video to really go over in detail the functionality of all of these buildings. That would be a very tall order, and as you will see, a lot of these are, to some extent, a work in progress, not only in terms of the text that I need to finish writing for these buildings, but also how the effects are displayed, and in some cases, even what the effects are. So we're looking mostly at the iconography here. We're looking mostly at the art and seeing how these design decisions will allow you to navigate through the building procedure through Wainriders. So clicking on the capital here, we can see the central building panel and how these buildings are going to display. Now, I don't believe this style is seen anywhere else. So this is something that Valor came up with. And his goal here, I think I can say fairly, is to provide a unified sort of aesthetic, a unified aesthetic that is going to carry across and quickly convey to the player the kind of information that they're going to need to navigate these panels here. So the icons here are meant to convey in an abstract way and a way that is pretty easy to learn and recognize what the function is of these buildings. So you can see that this icon here, this sort of wheat stalk, is going to be for a kind of farmland or the type of fertility of the region. You could also imagine that this building here would be a road. In this case, is the Osgiliath Road. This settlement here, or this icon, is indicating that this is a particular type of settlement. And then here we've got an icon representing the type of government or the type of population that you might expect to find here. In this case, this is a sort of a core region, of course, of Gondor itself. Now, because Minas Anor can build a lot of things, this is a higher tier settlement than most. We've got almost 2 full panels here of stuff. And again, some of these buildings are not going to be necessarily obvious to you if you use, say, 4th Age Total War as a benchmark, because we have rethought how some of these buildings will function. But on the other hand, there are going to be some pretty straightforward ones. We've got tanneries and wool makers here with a couple of images of livestock. We've got great havens here with the anchor, of course. We've got things like specialization buildings here, this Guild of Venturers in this case, lore buildings with this book icon, houses of healing with herbs and healing hands, so to speak. And so all of these icons correspond in some way to the building's function or the overall abstract idea about the building. Now, like 4th Age Total War, a lot of the buildings that you can construct are not really to be thought of as brick and mortar. In some cases, they represent a government type or a population even, or a policy, something like that. So some of these icons are going to reflect that in a more abstract way because there's not a concrete building to refer to. Now, in addition to these small icons, we've also got the larger building icons here. And again, Valor has spent a lot of time on this aspect of the mod so that when you open up from the more abstract picture here, you can get a full color depiction of the building. In this case, we're looking at the Great Haven. And one thing I like about this is that there is a correspondence between the icon and the larger picture. So what he's done is added into the lower left-hand corner on a scroll here the same symbol that you would see down here in the panel. So you will pick up the connection between the symbol and the building. If you're the type of person who thinks of your buildings in these larger scale ways, then it'll make it easier for you to make that connection. So here's the Great Haven. If we look at, say, the Houses of Healing, for example, again, we've got that icon in the lower left-hand corner next to the larger depiction of that. Now, some other features of this design are intended, again, to help you at a glance understand your buildings and maybe where they fit in the context of your settlement as a whole. So the Houses of Healing here has a number 4 in the right-hand corner. And here you may notice on this version we've got 4 pips. Both of these, the number, the numerical indication, and the number of pips here represent the tiers or the level of the building that we're looking at. And this is something that we could take a look at in the building browser as well. So with the project browser open, we can see that down in the Places of Healing section, we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 tiers, and we've, of course, constructed that 4th one, the Houses of Healing. And so this is just a way for you to easily see, without even having to open up the project browser or even having to do anything more than glance, that, okay, we're at the highest tier, we're at the 4th tier. Now, there's a lot to discuss here with regard to the building browser, the project browser, and I will devote a video or maybe a couple to all these different types of buildings and how they can be used. But it is something that is still being developed to some extent, or at least the particular effects of the buildings, and for sure the text that will accompany those effects. So we will devote some time to that a little bit later. Now, another thing you may notice in this panel is that there are some subtle distinctions between some of the icons. So, for example, we've got here this wall icon with a laurel, a golden wreath around it. And this is the Othram. So if we open up the image here, we can see a depiction of the black walls there that surround the city. And here we've got that laurel again. So this laurel is going to indicate a particularly important building, something that is, either famed across Middle-earth, or a special building that is maybe unique to the faction or important in some way. The laurel is also used, though, to indicate a sort of a core building. So, for example, down here, provincial government, this is the type of icon that we would use for that. So in terms of the types of buildings available to Osgiliath, we've got several unique sort of special buildings here. We've got the Othram, we've got the White Tree, as you would imagine, the Tower of the Sun, and the Osgiliath Road. But Minas Anor is about as central a location as you can get for Gondor. It's the starting capital, after all, and this is a place that is going to be very steeped in tradition, very important to the faction going back to earliest days. What happens, though, when you have a settlement that does not have that long history of settlement, of Gondorian influence, going back, thousands of years? Well, so to show you the difference between that, I've also built up this settlement up here in Kalanarthon. This is Amrunost, and so we can expect to see a bit of a different level of buildings here. And remember, in Minas Anor, we've got several full tiers of buildings constructed, almost 2 full panels worth. And in Amrunost, the situation is going to be rather different. You can also just tell that the types of buildings themselves, the types of icons, are rather different, with some that we did not see before. So previously in Minas Anor, we saw the golden wreath, the golden laurel, and that is because we were dealing with that really central population of Gondor, if you will. Over here in Kalanarthon, though, the colors are a little bit different. This is silver. And so again, we're looking at text and things that need to get added, and the effect lines and so on. All of this is subject to change. But the main thing we want to convey here is that this is a somewhat of a second tier, if you will. So not absolutely core to your homeland, somewhat of a peripheral concern. Another building type that you can see represented here that you could not see in Minas Anor is the migration So here we've gone ahead and completed the migration in terms of the men of Enedwaith. Now you may remember there was a video I did a little while ago on migration mechanics for Wainriders, and this is the process whereby certain factions can populate certain regions in their territory from other populations. So, for example, Calenardon is one of those places in Gondor that was historically underpopulated. And what you can do in this mod is bring in either the men of Enedwaith or potentially men from the north. And so to do that, you need to build a certain level of buildings. We've got 4 of those tiers completed here, so the migration is finished. And we've got this nice sort of scroll and map indicating that population growth, sort of the direction of where it's coming from. And to look at the project map here, you can see that we've got our 4 tiers of Calenardon migration. And we could have opted instead to populate this region with Eothiod. And so that would have been a slightly different approach here. You can see that the colors are going to be different, the arrows indicating the direction of migration as well. But at a glance, you can see that we've got a very different sort of abstract representation of a different sort of population type down here on the building panel. Another difference is that, unlike Minas Anor, which is a chief city, Amhernost is going to be required to focus in a particular direction of development. And in this case, I've gone with administrative focus, represented here by the sort of scroll and quill. And that laurel around it, again, is indicating this is a building of some importance to the development, the governance of the settlement. This type of building indicates the other types of buildings that can be constructed here. So looking at the project browser again, we've got this panel here indicating, broadly speaking, your 3 options. You would first need to do some sort of consultation building to decide which of these 3 options you would choose, and then you'd have your choice between building administrative focus, a sort of military focus, or more of a financial focus. And again, that's something that maybe we'll go into more detail about in a future video, but for now, this is how it will essentially display on the screen. If we contrast this with Minas Anor, however, you'll see that it is a little bit different. For Minas Anor, we're looking at a chief city, so we don't have the option to specialize in administrative, financial, or military. You can build everything, and that's going to be indicated here as well. Now, some of these unique or special buildings are indestructible. That is, they cannot be removed or destroyed. For example, the Othram is not destructible, as you would imagine based on what we know about this. However, something like the White Tree of Minas Anor is, at least currently. I'm very happy about this. Just love the idea of taking over Minas Anor and cutting down that white tree, right? And of course, different cities are going to offer different things. In Osgiliath, for example, you are going to find the Osgiliath Road, as you would imagine. We're also going to find the ruins of the Dome of Stars. Can't get any more destroyed than that. And in Minas Ithil, we can find like the Tower of the Moon, for example. So this should give you some overview as to what you can expect from the buildings, from that central building panel that you're going to be working with throughout the campaign, and how these relate to the larger buildings that you can eventually construct. Again, a lot of these effects, how they're going to display, may be changed. These are things that we are working through currently. Certainly get to add some text here. But this gives you a basic idea of how it's going to work. And so this is intended as a unified system to sort of aid the player working around all the different technical stuff that we've been adding to the mod. So I hope you enjoyed this look at the building UI. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and we will probably be exploring this feature and the buildings themselves in more detail in coming videos. Hope to see you then. Until the next one, everybody, take care.